Men often find themselves blindsided by a culture that hates authentic masculinity, and many have given in and succumbed to the ever-evolving culture and woke society. But not us. We are the ReMENant, faithful Catholic men from 3 different generations who reach through the radio to tackle current events that challenge our wills and empower the practice of the Catholic faith through thought-provoking discernment and prayer. So, if you're feeling overwhelmed and bombarded, it's time to turn your radio up and join us for The ReMENant on the Carolina Catholic Radio Network.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to The ReMENant Show here on the Carolina Catholic Media Network. My name is Bill Snyder. It's great to be with you. As always, I'm joined by my 2 good friends, Ray Haywood and Stephen Thomas. I want to remind you that the ReMENant Show is sponsored by the Fraternity of St. Joseph Men's Group. You can visit fsjjourneyman.com to review the easy-to-follow resource documents and consider starting a chapter of the FSJ Men's Group in your own parish today. But gentlemen, welcome, and thank you so much for joining me here on the ReMENant, as we always do.
Awesome. It's just great opportunity to be here.
Time and fellowship. You know how I feel.
I know.
So I'm going to start off tonight, and the topic of our conversation is nihilism. So if we were to start our conversation by looking at the definition of nihilism, we can quickly gain perspective on how this evil philosophy has taken root in our society as we take an objective look back on past generations of good people that have unintentionally stood by in the face of our demise. And I don't say that lightly. Nihilism, total rejection of established laws and institutions, anarchy, terrorism, or other revolutionary activity, total and absolute destructiveness, especially towards the world at large and including oneself. You hear this? Including oneself. An extreme form of skepticism, the denial of all real, get this word, existence, or the possibility of an objective basis for truth, nothingness, or non-existence. So let's take a look at the last description of the denial of all real existence, or the possibility of an objective basis for truth. Real existence, or the possibility of an objective basis for truth. What is this philosophy trying to remove here? For me, it's as plain as day. The authority of the author of all authority. It's just sad. So how can this be accomplished? Bill, right here with us tonight, once mentioned to me that for us to accept something, we first have to disagree with it. The problem with the acceptance is that the generation past, the generations in front of us, do not understand the disagreement. The only thing that they see is the acceptance. You know, it's a sad reality. So every little thing that chips away at us that we disagree with but accept, our children don't see that. They only see the acceptance. This is how our society is slowly being chipped away at from the inside, slowly, generation by generation. Let's go back to our previous show on social capital to gain more perspective. Let's look at how social capital works and who holds this capital. Social capital is what moves our society towards our cultural norms. In the past, social capital was held in our faith and our families. Now social capital is held by government and in the media. I believe nihilism and the mindset it promotes has played an important role in how our society has placed our social capital outside of our families and our faith communities. You know, this is something that we spoke about in our men's group, over at St. Thomas, the Fraternity of St. Joseph Men's Group. And one of the things that we spoke about was an article that Stephen had written. It was something that was brought up, and it was great. I'm going to pass this over to Stephen to take this a little further. But before I do, I'd like to suggest, Bill, maybe you could put the article that Stephen wrote into our show notes.
Yeah, absolutely. You'll be able to find that in the show notes on the podcast version of this, folks. So just take a look at the bottom of the show notes on the podcast version of this, and you'll see Stephen's article.
So it's Musings of a Young Mind, correct, Stephen?
Yeah, that's right. So, folks, for this particular article that Ray's mentioned, you're going to find it at musingsofayoungmindworks.wordpress.com. And this article under the post section will be titled "The Logic of the Soul and the Inevitable Failure of Nihilism." Now, I'll try to keep this brief because this is one of my areas of, I want to say expertise, but I won't claim that. But there's a lot that could be said, and there are a lot of different examples that I could point to, but I'll try to focus in on a couple. But if any of you have ever studied or read anything by people like George Orwell or Alexander Solzhenitsyn or the Catholic priest Walter Zizek or Whittaker Chambers, for example, they all are in this vein, particularly in its 20th century variant dealing with nihilism in the form of Soviet communism. So basically, the core idea of nihilism is it's an ethical deflationary theory. Now, a scholar, Jacob Ross, essentially coined this in saying that nihilism is the state where no decision is better than any other, aka there is no objective value, therefore everything is subjective or in the eye of the beholder. So this can take more mild or more extreme forms, but the more mild forms will gently go down the slope into full-blown nihilism if left unchecked. So this nihilism is at the bottom of this, you could say it's a snowball effect. But essentially, what happens, now I was reflecting earlier before this podcast on a famous Nietzsche quote that some of you may know. Friedrich Nietzsche, the German philosopher, who said, "God is dead and we have killed him." Now, what he meant by that was that we have removed the constraints that a God-oriented society had. And in the absence of that, people have tried over different regimes in the past to uplift man and make him a god. But the results have been catastrophic. And ultimately, what ends up happening is that those in power become the deity, and everybody else suffers as a result because the person at the top is flawed. Now, I want to take a look in my article at one particular point, which is from Vladimir Lenin's task to the youth leagues, which he gave in 1917, talking about bringing about the communist utopia. And I'll just read this quote here. "We say that our morality is entirely subordinated to the interests of the proletariat's class struggle. Our morality stems from the interests of the class struggle of the proletariat. The old society was based on the oppression of all the workers and peasants by the landowners and capitalists. We had to destroy all that and overthrow them. But to do that, we had to create unity. That is something God cannot create." So essentially, the core part where that goes wrong is morality is subjected to the interests of the state, meaning if the state's interests are served, it is therefore moral, but there is no qualification on what exactly is the state's interest. And we know from writers like Solzhenitsyn that sometimes the state interests were putting people in gulags because they spoke out. And there are just myriad examples. And that is just what happens when you take God off of the transcendental pedestal. So I want to look at a couple other examples to kind of bring this more into perspective. Now, quickly, if you've ever heard of Jordan Peterson, he has a biblical series where he talks about Cain and Abel. And his take on Cain and Abel was that Cain acts out of spite because his offerings to God, unlike Abel's, as if you may know, that Abel gave first fruits to God and God accepted the offering, but Cain did not give first fruits. He just offered a portion, but took no care to see that it was of the highest quality of what Cain had. And God did not take Cain's offering, and out of spite, because Cain did not understand and looked and compared himself to his brother, and out of envy murdered him. Now, it's that same sort of interior movement of nihilism that took hold in Cain's heart that said, I'm going to spurn existence because it did not favor me, because look at this other. But he didn't stop to say, but I did something wrong. It was, I'm owed the same, but it lacked introspection to say, I did not offer that which was the first fruits. And to close, I think that this actually rang true because I was writing my whole reflection on this, and I was like, well, it sounds trite, but I'll go ahead and put it in. But I think that I think it was in the Phantom Menace where Master Yoda says to the boy Anakin, "Fear leads to anger, and anger leads to hate, and hate leads to suffering." And I think that that is a similar terminus by which we can look at this, because you have that coalescing of power around the party, as George Orwell said. But what ends up happening is that they end up with a oppressor-oppressed dichotomy, a revolutionary cause. But then in the name of the oppressed, what happens is that people end up suffering on a massive scale. So I think I'll leave it at that. But if you're more interested in looking more in depth, there is a whole wealth of literature, both referenced in my article and beyond, which you could look at.
Awesome stuff, Stephen. Really, really great stuff. And your comments and your perspective on this really remind me of something I saw on Facebook earlier this week, where it says that the people who hid Anne Frank were breaking the law, but the people who killed her were following it. And, again, understanding this entire topic is really important, because I think, what's going on right now in our society is a push for this to become the dominant, social paradigm. This is what people are struggling to bring out to the forefront. And there's only one force that can rewind this, right? There's only one force that can rewind it. That is the church. And I was reflecting on this a little bit over the course of the day here, and I was thinking about the quote from Our Lady of Fatima, and this is from her fourth apparition to the children. I believe it was August 19th. And she said this. She said, pray much and sacrifice for sinners. For many souls go to hell because there is no one to sacrifice and pray for them. And this is really how we deal with this. I think when we talk in this topic, it's very easy to get the Superman perspective, right? Like, I'm going to go save the world. But that's not our mission. Our mission isn't to save the world or the church. Our mission is to save one soul at a time. And this quote from Our Lady of Fatima, from her fourth apparition, really says something important. I focus on a negative part of it. Many souls go to hell. And if we are to believe what she says, then that's a reality, right? Many souls go to hell. But we aren't called to save all of them. We are called to pray and to sacrifice for the ones that are placed in our path, right? In our way along life's journey. And if we do that, we then transform one life, and the next life transforms another life, and another life, and another life. And, trying to push back against something that is so large is not always going to be successful. But it's the groundswell. It's the masses. As Stephen was talking about, that huge amount of people that become oppressed as a result of this. When they reach down and lift up their brothers and sisters, when they look at saving one soul at a time, the souls that are in front of them, in their families, their children, their wives, their husbands, when you do that, and you offer that prayer and you offer that sacrifice, I think that's even a bigger word over the prayer, is the sacrifice, right? This takes sacrifice, and big sacrifice, laying down our lives for one another. And when we do that, nihilism will be defeated that way. You'll be defeated that way. So I really encourage you to, number one, read Stephen's article, because he just has a beautiful mind, and he's able to really help you articulate it, unpack it, and understand this. So really delve into that this week. We got to take a short break here on The Remnant. We'll be right back after these messages. Today, many students go to college with numerous questions about their faith, yearning to know if the seed planted in them as a child is both true and practical. Using the miracle on the road to Emmaus as a model, young adult ministers conversed weekly for 3 months with college students about the most pressing questions they had about the Catholic faith. As they journeyed together virtually, something amazing happened. Doubts disappeared, fears faded, and Jesus revealed that He is still alive. Hearts Burning Within Us, the latest book from Patchwork Heart Ministry, is a result of that grace-infused conversation. It is the perfect back-to-school gift for recent high school graduates and current college students. Get your copy for them today at patchworkheart.org or by calling 424-704-3278. That's 424-704-3278.
Welcome back to The Remnant on the Carolina Catholic Radio Network.
So our saint for the day is Saint André Bessette. This is a great example of an undervalued saint in his own time. I listen to the Holy Family School of Faith Rosary every day. It's a beautiful way for me to gain perspective on all that's shared by these two men that put it out. If you don't know about it, look it up, Holy Family School of Faith. So for January 5th, they did 5 meditations on St. André Bessette. And Dr. Troy Hinkle is the person who actually wrote this. I'm going to read to you his first meditation only. There's 4 more you could go back to look for. I'm sure you could find it. So Dr. Troy Hinkle here. First meditation. When St. André Bessette came to the Holy Cross Brothers in 1870 at the age of 25, he carried with him a note from his pastor. He wasn't able to read or write. And the note says, "I am sending you a saint." The brothers read the note, and then they read the young man, sickly, jobless, simple, and tried to send him away. As Brother Andre later noted, the brothers showed me the door. I stayed there for 40 years. As the doorman for the monastery, Brother Andre lived in a little room on the side of the front entry. He spent much of the night on his knees, while in the daytime counseled visitors, prayed for them, and anointed the sick with oils he referred to as the oils of St. Joseph. I'm going to say that again. The oils of St. Joseph. Due to his tremendous devotion to St. Joseph, soon the crutches of the healed invalids began to pile up from those miraculously cured. Could you imagine this? Stories of this wonderful working saint spread throughout the towns and the countrysides of Montreal. Weak in body, Andre revealed the truth about where strength comes from. And he said that strength is found in the spirit. So he symbolized the teachings of St. Paul, which is 1 Corinthians 1:27, where it says that God chooses the weak in the world to shame the strong. I would imagine that he definitely shamed the strong there, That's powerful, no? So, I go back to that and I think about oils of St. Joseph, crutches piling up from the humble workings of a man who was looked down upon by his peers. Him saying that he stayed at the door for 40 years. I'm all about this. This is like awesome. And I thought that it played so well into what we're sharing here today with nihilism. In my humble opinion, St. André Bessette is a good example of how we, in our humanity, place worldly views and values on someone's life and get it completely wrong. So the only way that we get to know this is by looking back. What do you think those Holy Cross brothers from the monastery were thinking about St. André Bessette over his life? I mean, this is he said that he stayed at the door for 40 years. I mean, these people had, these other brothers, they had to see all these miracles that were happening happening around him. You know, I always tell my children, as people, it takes us 30 years to look back on an event and look at it objectively and see how we truly lived through it. These brothers, faithful men, had 40 years. They couldn't give him a better room than the room besides the door. What do you think, Stephen?
So this saint, I was just astounded to read of his humility. He took no credit for himself, especially when, by the time standards, I mean, he blew up, became extremely popular. It's documented, I mean, like Ray said, that, and I have to admit, I find this hilarious. I wish I could have met the guy because I appreciate his sense of humor, that the brothers showed him the door and he remained there for 40 years. I mean, it takes a special character to have that kind of humor about something that serious. And, by the end of it, he's curing so many people. And I think he was documented saying at one point when he was asked, how it happened, he said, "I do not cure. Saint Joseph cures." And I mean, all you need to know to verify is just like the stories of the crutches and the fact that he received 80,000 letters a year from people. And he needed 4 secretaries to help him sort them all. I mean, that's crazy. I imagine his brothers just like, that guy André, he's back at it again with this healing, and he was supposed to be just the doorman, and it's like, this is a complete turning of the tables, like this, but that's exactly what it is. And I'm reminded this whole time, it's like, he's not some great hero from some great tale. He's no white knight in shining armor. He's just somebody who did a lot of small acts with great love. Bill, what are your thoughts?
First of all, I loved this saint, and listening to you guys, I don't have a ton more to add on Saint André Bessette's life because he's so simple, but he reminds me of another blessed in our church, Solanus Casey, right? And Solanus Casey was a doorman for the Capuchin Franciscans in Detroit. Solanus Casey was actually ordained as a deacon in my home parish here in Milwaukee, which is crazy to say that. And we'll have to maybe on another episode delve into him. But saints like Saint André Bessette and Solanus Casey remind us that simple faith confounds the world. And it's not how learned or worldly you are, it's how faithful to God you are that makes you a saint. Right? That's the only reason why you will be called a saint, because you were faithful and loyal to God. You're not going to be called a saint because you did great things or opened the door. I mean, even if you opened the door 100,000 times or 1,000,000 times, like Saint André Bessette did, and cured, through the intercession of Saint Joseph, all these people, that is not what is going to get you into heaven. What is going to get you into heaven is your faithfulness to God. And that's such the reminder for us here in 2022, right? To sit back and say, what is God? And this will kind of roll into my ReMENant challenge. What is God trying to strip away in your life? And are you fighting him? Or are you just going to go serve and open the door that God is asking you to open? Then let go of the things he's trying to strip you of. If he's trying to take them away, don't make him take them away from you with force. Just say, here, lay them at the foot of the cross. God, I understand what you're trying to do. So that's my ReMENant challenge for you. How about you, Stephen?
Oh man, how to piggyback off of that. My reflection in what I ought to have done in the ReMENant challenge is how can I compose a challenge that sends the message that, one, we ought to be men of faith first, Catholics first, and be intentional on the culture that we form around ourselves. And it's in that way, when we place our faith in the first place, because I know that we all have many different priorities. We have, bills to pay and jobs to manage and this, that, or the other. There are myriad things, but we have to be Catholic first. So what I would ask you to do is to set aside time that you can use to make a structured holy hour, or spend an hour in a church or in prayer if you want to set up a home oratory or prayer room of sorts if you're able. Have a place and a time set aside that is a space and a time where you can be Catholic first, so that, as Bill said, you're able to best open that door. There is a important aspect to having physical signs and physical places that denote your Catholic culture, even if it's just to yourself. Like my particular prayer table is an end table in my bedroom, and I have Blessed Karl of Austria and his wife Zili there, and I have the Holy Family there, and I have a small little wall placard sized Stations of the Cross. But that denotes my culture and my patrimony, and that's what we all need to have. Ray, what's your ReMENant?
Man, oh man, Stephen, you are like unbelievable. You older guys that are listening, you have to encourage your sons. And we need young people to hear the voice of Stephen and what he has to share to his peers. This is important stuff. I am not patting you on the back, Stephen. I'm actually sharing a fact here.
Try to be humble. I'm trying.
It's good. Keep chipping away at that. So my ReMENant challenge this week is that we keep the perspective of nihilism in mind as we look to intentionally place social capital back into our families and faith communities in all that we do. That we share this awareness with our brothers, especially our younger brothers. The mission statement for the Fraternity of St. Joseph Men Groups opens with what we say is important, but the way we say it is even more important because our children are listening and watching. I mean, we have to keep that in mind. Everything we say and do, there's a time and a place. Our father didn't talk about certain things in front of the family. Do parents of today still have that type of intentionality? I don't know. I don't see it. It's important that we do it. I can tell you that much. And that when we apply this intentional thought to the way that we as fathers and leaders of our communities conduct ourselves in our homes and in our public square, we can truly make a difference for those people that touch our lives. I mean, that's the way we change things. We change things as paternal fathers at our tables and the community we touch, as spiritual fathers at the altar and the community that we profess to. This is how we change things. We're not going to be able to reach past that. So let's do that well. And that's when we can change things. And let's go back to what Stephen said earlier about Cain and how Cain didn't give from his first fruit, from the surplus. And we need to be mindful not to give from the surplus. Our time, treasure, talent, we need to share this first with our families, second with our communities. We need to bring our petitions to the altar, just along with the gifts that we bring to the altar. And we need to pray for our country, for our families, for our faith communities, for our spiritual fathers, and for our paternal fathers. So please, I hope that this episode of nihilism scratched at you. Turn the page on this with your family. It's important.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Ray. Thank you, Stephen. It's always awesome to share the airwaves with you. And I want to remind everybody that you can follow, friend, and like us. Just head over to CarolinaCatholicRadio.org, and you will be able to find out more about this program and all the programs. But until next time, from all of us here at The ReMENant, may God bless you and your families.
Thank you for joining The ReMENant today. For more information about us, email TheReMENantShow@gmail.com. That's the ReMenant show@gmail.com.